How you guys doing today? Shabbat Shalom. All right. Well, I'm able to come more now in the area, at least, because my granddaughter lives down the hill. So, with my son, and we were hanging out one night, and I told my wife, said, I miss my granddaughter. Let's go to California. And it's like, so I called Pastor. Hey, Pastor, I'm going to be in your area. He goes, really? So you're teaching, right? I said, well, I'm not calling you, so I got to teach. I'm just letting you know I'm going to be in the area. So I would like for every single one of you to maybe get one of these. Could you pass it around, please? This is the methodology that I use. Let me keep one. And this is the methodology that I use for my studies. If you've been following me, you know I use a methodology. And the reason why I do is because I found that there are themes in Scripture. There are certain themes that are prevailing throughout the narrative in the Bible. And thank you, Pastor. And, sometimes we don't connect with certain stories. But when I don't know if you know, my website is being designed right now as a place, as an educational platform. The whole idea is to eventually, I pray, when I get my doctorate, thank you, hopefully have my website be accredited. I'm already working on some of the steps to make it a school type thing, okay? And one of the things that I've done for the last 25 years is try to study as much as I could in different areas. If you look at the card, it's a methodology. Okay? And every single one of the spheres, and today you're going to catch me in a good day. I'm going to go slow because I've had a really bad episode of the throat. I was not able to speak for almost 2 weeks. So now it's slowly coming back, and I'm trying to learn to pace myself. It's kind of hard for Puerto Rican. But every single one of the spheres, covenants, righteousness, honor and shame, new creation, order and chaos, sacred space, and ultimately in the center where you have life, order, holiness, and Eden where God dwells. If you look at the story of Hanukkah, it encompasses every single one of those spheres. And we're going to try to break those down. I'm going to give you, Hanukkah as well as Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, Yom Kippur. Everything now has become a struggle and an argument. I mean, it's very difficult now. For a teacher, it's very hard. It doesn't matter how much evidence I give you, how much information I give you, how much facts I give you, someone's going to have an objection. And I understand it. I don't necessarily like it, because when you spend 6 hours a day studying, and then someone who you can clearly tell does not spend the same time, it doesn't mean I'm smarter. It means that I'm validating the information more often. And it's a little frustrating when you have people who don't necessarily look at the information, but because of their biases, they have an objection. So, as I'm learning peer review, I come to the realization that we need to do a better job equipping the body of Messiah to understand the principles behind the feasts, understand the principles behind national holidays like Hanukkah. I know when somebody's not really studying, when they keep telling me we don't need to keep Hanukkah because it's not one of the Moedim, one of the feasts of the Lord. Duh. Anyone who studies the Torah knows that Hanukkah is not one of the feasts. So what is it about? And again, sometimes we rather argue about certain things instead of understanding the extreme significance of the celebration and what it means. Today, they celebrate it a little different than they used to, a tradition and custom. Just like Christmas, it was supposed to be on the birth of Yeshua. Now, we know Yeshua was not born December 25th. We know that. But still, tradition now makes it a fat dude on a red suit and bringing, completely unrelated to the biblical narrative. If they only would have kept the narrative of the birth of Yeshua, but they don't even do that anyway. So not only they're celebrating the birthday on the wrong day, which the Bible never tells you to celebrate the birthday of anybody, but then they change everything, and then we get so attached to the customs and the traditions more than the word itself. It happens to all of us. Hanukkah is an example of an observance of a day that when you talk about it, the anti-Semitic spirit of the person reveals itself. It's amazing. You know who you talk to by the way they refer to these things. And if you look to your right, at the end you see a temple. Everything with Hanukkah has to do with the temple. But modern day Judaism makes it about the dreidel, makes it about the legend of the oil. That's a legend. Now, what's interesting is, my teacher, Joseph Good, I know you know who he is. He spoke with the gentleman who used to be the leader of the Temple Institute a long time ago, Chaim Richmond. And I guess the Temple Institute, they did a test. They basically took oil, the best possible oil you can get, and based on the wicks that they used, as the Bible describes it, they found that the oil did last around 8 days. They have to clean them and whatever. So they did some research in the Temple Institute. Now, that's what Joe told me, that the person who did it told them. But that's besides the point. So what we're going to be looking in tonight is giving you more of the eschatological perspective of Hanukkah and why we should remember it and why we should observe it. Not because it's a holiday like Sukkot or like Yom Teruah or like Passover and Sukkot, Shavuot. Because these are high holidays. We know this. But we're going to cover certain historical things. Let me ask you guys a question. And you can please answer and be honest. I'm not trying to make you feel bad or thinking that I know more than you. But I need to know, how many of you have actually done the homework to study the historical significance of Hanukkah? I'm not talking about what you heard, what someone told you. The amount of information that there is available to tell us about who these people were. Who are these guys? Where do they come from? Why is this not in the canons? It happened between what they call the 400 years of silence between Malachi and also Matthew. There was no silence going on there. There was the Greek Empire conquers all of the ancient world, and now Alexander the Great dies, and now you have the division of the kingdom into 4 different generals, and one of them is wicked and he's evil. Okay, and now he is not only conquering Israel, but also the persecution and the abuse. But people don't realize, they assume that the issue with the Greeks only lasted 3 years. I mean, if you follow the story, it lasted almost 5-10 years. The whole oppression. Eventually, they got their independence. But what I like to do is give you an idea of what Yeshua did. Let's go to John chapter 10. And with that, we open with a word of prayer. Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we bless you on your Shabbat, on your holy day. We thank you, and we so are honored that you have separated us as your special heritage to give us your Shabbat and sanctify us with your commandments so we become your people in your covenant. In the name of Yeshua, amen. Let's go to chapter 10 of the book of John, okay? And what I like to do, because I cannot really force my throat too much, I like to just give you a little bit of a study. I want you to understand really why Hanukkah is important and how you can take the principles of Hanukkah even to today. We see it. The worst possible type of a Jewish person that you will find is a Hellenized, secular Jewish person. Right now, I mean, for the life of me, I do not understand why some of the Jews in America voted for a particular, Democratic party that all their focus was abortion. I just don't get it. So the Jews in America, and by the way, it's not just the Jews in America. It happened with the Jews in Babylon. It happened with the Jews in Greece. It happened with the Jews in Rome. I mean, when I've been doing a lot of Greco-Roman history. I went to Turkey, Greece. I went to Ephesus. I was there in Ephesus. Somebody was talking about Ephesus. And I was right there in the main street. I saw how they lived. And I'm thinking, man, the Jews were there. In Rome, you have a lot of Jews living in Rome, they received their freedom. They were citizens. And instead of going back to Jerusalem, they stayed in Rome. They still have communities. To this day, they're there. And I don't get it. Now, the history tells us that less than 10% of the Jews that were in Babylon actually returned with Ezra, with Zerubbabel, and later on Nehemiah. I mean, there's a problem with our people. Our people refuse to return to the land. Our people refuse to receive the gift of the inheritance God has given us. And it's happening to us in America. Look, America will fall. I love this country. I've been here since 1979. I will fight for your Constitution. I will fight for you. Although I'm not a native born, I was born in Puerto Rico. A U.S. citizen, but I was born in Puerto Rico. But I'm fully committed, Puerto Rican. I'm fully committed to the Constitution of the United States. God has blessed me to be here. But I know it will fall eventually. Why does it need to fall? Because the same thing that the Jews did after the conquest and the victory over the Greeks, in which it tells you in the book of Maccabees that they went out looking for a treaty with the Romans. After they beat the Maccabees, they go make a treaty with the Romans. It was a treaty so the Romans would defend them, because the Romans were coming up as a great kingdom. Now, I thought the Bible tells us that it is the God of Israel, according to his covenant, that defends Israel and protects them. He is our shield and our protector. But yet Israel has always leaned on other countries. Obviously, you want to have allies. I get it. But in order for Israel and for God to truly reveal himself as a powerful Elohim and then no one else, then the coverage on the tight-knit relationship with this country eventually will end. I think we're at a grace period right now. I really do. I think that if we don't do anything right now, in 4 years, and we don't stand our ground, and we stop seeing the syncretism within our walk, which is really what's killing us, syncretism, the mixture between the holy and the profane, then we're never going to be truly free, and we're going to be persecuted. And it seems like we like to be persecuted in order to feel like we're worth anything. I'm telling you. You know, right now, Israel, after they were persecuted October 7th, they rallied together, they got together, they literally made Gaza a parking lot. But then after a while, when things don't go their way, now they're fighting amongst each other again. But then, okay, the Lord says, stop fighting with each other. So he sends the Iranians to attack them. So they focus on God. And they depend on the whole, the dome, which I'm glad, for protection. And then they keep fighting with each other instead of calling out to God. And then now the Syrians, they're falling. That's a nice little problem we're having. Because what people don't know, the people who are taking over, is they're actually ISIS. All they want to do is kill the Jews. They don't care how. So right now they're worried about Syria and trying to get established over there. And eventually they'll come down and they try to attack Israel too. So for the meantime, we're focusing with Lebanon right now, right? With Hezbollah. And that'll end because when, the president will come back into power, God willing, then there's going to be a show. I'm showing you the eschatological steps. It will happen again. We will be delivered again from the hand of the enemy. We will be. What we do with that afterwards is what defines us. Are we going to return back to God? Are we returning to him? Or are we going to depend on the dome to save us? Or we're going to depend on America to stand up for us? The one thing that's really turned out great in a way, the only positive thing that I've seen out of the most despicable act of offense in the last 70 years against the Jewish people, is that Israel, for at least for a year, they've come together as a kingdom, as a people. We need to be united. Because if not, the enemies will kill us. That's short-lived. By the way, it's short-lived that it took 3 years in the story. So let's read about Yeshua and why did he go to the temple. Now, it's interesting in the Spanish world. I love my people. I love my Spanish-speaking people. But there's always something new of an argument. I'm telling you, it's tiresome because we can give them the evidence, but for some reason they just want to continue the replacement theology mentality they have. That's really what it is. But if we focus on the evidence and we present the facts, See, the evidence establishes truth. If you know that what you're presenting can be validated, your job is to present it to the best of your ability in an educational way, and then let the Spirit of the living God, move them to search the evidence. Now they're saying, well, Yeshua really didn't want to be there. Now, look at the logic. Let's go read, and then I'm going to give you some historical accounts behind it. And then I'm going to read from the book of Maccabees. And I'm going to tell you the significance of why Yeshua was there. By the way, have you ever read the book of Haggai in context of Hanukkah? Because you see, when they came back from Babylon, they came back to start building the altar. They didn't finish the wall. They didn't finish the building because the Ephraimites, they sent a letter to the king of Persia. And he told them, no, these guys don't let us, help them with the temple. So the king of Persia says, stop it. It's creating too much chaos for me. Interesting that it was the Ephraimites, the 10 tribes, people who were mingled with the Syrians. It was a mixed race who were not allowed by Ezra to help them, that they got so mad, they sabotaged the whole building of the house of God. And the reason why Ezra did not allow it is because according to the laws of Kedusha, of holiness, the city is holy. The walls are holy. If you really read the book of Nehemiah, you notice the people in charge of building the walls were priests. They were the people who are supposed to touch holy things. The Ephraimites could not help in that matter, not because they didn't need the help, but because according to the laws of holiness, they would have profaned it. But yet, because these people, the Ephraimites, at that time, they're not studying the temple. They're mixed among the nations, mixing the holy and the profane like they did. Because the lions are killing the people, so the Syrians send word back to the king of Syria and told them, yo man, the lions are killing us. Please send some of them back to teach us how to worship their God. And they mixed it. Syncretism. Mixing the holy and the profane. I submit to you, that is the number one problem that we have amongst our ranks. Mixing the holy and the profane. But yet, if I ask the audience on the internet, what is holy and what's profane, and what is clean and unclean, we'll be hard-pressed to find out really what it is. So therefore, we're not really understanding what holiness is, or what clean is, because we're not really studying the temple that really teaches us what those things are. Is this making sense? So now Yeshua goes to Jerusalem. It tells us there. In John chapter 10. Juan capítulo 10. Chapter 10. John 10. The feast of the dedication. Hanukkah. Can somebody go to Psalm 30? Please. Psalm 30. Let's read Psalm 30. I'm going to make it more like a study. Is that okay? Thank you for all agreeing. The title of the psalm, which is actually the first verse. It's not in the first verse here, but it's supposed to be the first verse. If you look underneath Psalm 30, praise for dramatical deliverance, a psalm. A song at the dedication of the house of David. The word Hanukkah appears in the Bible. Psalm 30. It means dedication. So if you find the word dedication in the Bible, it's Hanukkah, because that's what it means. Now, so they are doing a celebration that we don't know anything about in regards to temple service. Okay, and we're going to find out. We're going to find out because you see that Hanukkah you see there? How many branches? How many branches? 8, and one in the middle, right? 9? Why 9? Why 8? 8 days of dedication of what? The altar. See, the legend is the oil. You talk to a regular Jewish person walking down the street. Oh, it's the legend of the oil. No, it's actually the dedication of the altar. It takes 7 days. I'm going to give you the verses. We're going to read them. See, what I want is for you to know when somebody gives you an objection, you say, no, historically it's about the temple. It's not about the legend. So you will think if Yeshua says, you made my father's house a house of thieves, that he has a zeal for the house of God, then that he would actually show up for the dedication of the altar, which, by the way, everything in the Bible from the beginning has always been about the altar. Example, Cain and Abel. Cain, it was Cain's idea to bring the offering, a mincha. By the way, if you read the story here, it's the same thing. They wanted to do a mincha. Okay, anyway, so that's another story. So you have Cain and Abel. And it was Cain's idea to build the altar and say, and bring an offering to God. The first argument was about who presented what and what attitude in which to present it. When Noah came out of the ark, he built an altar. When Abraham came into the land, he built an altar. When Abraham went down to Egypt and returned, he built an altar. Isaac built an altar. And Jacob built an altar. Israel built an altar. The profanation of the temple is what is going to direct us into the great tribulation. Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. So you will think that the altar, which is such a prevailing theme in the Bible, because it represents the authority of God on the earth. The Temple Psalm 24 is the first day of the week. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. That is the altar psalm. Basically, the moment you build the altar, the earth now belongs legally to God. That's why everything always deals with the altar, because it represents the authority, the ownership, and the kingship of God on the earth. You can have a building of the temple, but it's not an official temple until the altar is built. The altar must come first. Once the altar comes, then the rest of the buildings can be built. Without an altar, it's just a beautiful building. With the altar, now is the house of God. Did you get that? Many people don't necessarily get that. So the story of Hanukkah, as Yeshua is actually observing it, he went up because it's about the dedication of the temple. You see, he could have gone and he could have chosen not to go. Why? Let me ask you all a question. If Yeshua didn't go to Jerusalem for the Feast of Dedication, or for the Feast of Dedication, the days of dedication, would he be breaking the commandments? So why does it mention it? Why do you and I need to know that he went there? Why? I mean, it's not a commandment because we already agreed that only the 3 pilgrimage feasts is when you're supposed to go up. You're not even supposed to go up on Yom Teruah or Yom Kippur if you don't want to. You are commanded to go pilgrimage on the 3 high holidays of Pesach, unleavened bread, 7 days. Then Shavuot, which is 7 days too, by the way. Then you also have Sukkot, 7 days. So why would Yeshua go? See, that's the first question you have to ask. It's not a commandment. So what is the narrative telling me? Why is John is writing it as it's that important? So when people say, well, it's not a commandment if you to go, okay, fine, not a problem. If you don't want to keep Hanukkah, you don't have to. It's not a commandment. It's not a commandment, but it is a national holiday. And the national holiday was not established by the modern government of Israel. Did you know that? The establishment of Hanukkah as a national holiday was actually established in 1 Maccabees chapter 4, in which it tells you that the great assembly came together and they decreed that now they're going to celebrate it on the 25th of Kislev. Yes? Are you with me? Now, what's interesting is when you read the book of Haggai, I was leading in that direction, the book of Haggai is a prophecy about Haggai, through the Spirit of God, telling Zerubbabel, telling Ezra, enough already, guys, Nehemiah, build the temple. You don't need to wait for the king. Do it. Finish it. You know what day that decree came forth in prophecy in the book of Haggai? About 150 years, 125 years before Hanukkah? Look it up. On the 24th of Kislev. So the prophecy to build the temple, given to Zerubbabel and given to Ezra, Nehemiah, came on the 24th of Kislev, right? A day before Hanukkah, which is on the 25th. You see what I'm saying? Is that a coinkydinky? That happens almost 100 years, 125 years before Hanukkah came. Because it's about the temple. I don't find it to be a coincidence. Go back in the book of Haggai, chapter 2, you see it. You got to follow the dates. You got to follow the sequences of events. You got to follow the history. If not, it's not going to make any sense. So, Yeshua says, then the Feast of Dedication took place in Jerusalem. It was winter, so now you know it's not Sukkot. But why would they celebrate it as Sukkot? Yeah, because in the book of Maccabees, it tells you they were not allowed to celebrate Sukkot for 3 years, and because there is not a commandment and instructions how to keep a celebration, you are not allowed, according to the Torah, to add or to take away from the Torah. So what they did, they took the celebrations of Sukkot with the same rejoicing, and they actually moved it also to do it for the high holiday of celebration of the dedication of the altar. You're not allowed to add. So when I hear people saying, well, the rabbis are adding to the Bible, you don't know what you're talking about. And I say that because I used to do that all the time. Somebody told me, what are you talking about? A rabbi told me, I'm not allowed to add anything. We have to use a biblical verse as a precedent to do any custom. Every custom in Israel comes from a biblical verse. Whether it's taken out of context or not, that's another story. But they cannot add something out of the blue. It's not like in Christianity, they add the 25th of December. The Bible doesn't talk about that. You see the contrast? Okay, so it says, and Yeshua was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon. Now, the temple was huge. When he talks about the portico of Solomon, he has nothing to do inside that building there. It's actually right. Actually, by the time Yeshua walked there, the east and also the west was considered the portico of Solomon, but more than likely it was on the east before the entrance of the temple. So the Jews surrounding him and began to say to him, how long will you keep us in suspense? Are you the Messiah? Tell us plainly. Yeshua answered them and says, I told you and you do not believe. The deeds that I do in my Father's name. These testify about me. I need you to really understand this. He is saying all of this stuff when they are celebrating the dedication of the house and the authority of God on the earth again. And now they're asking him in whose authority he is coming. And in verse 27, he says, my sheep listen to my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish forever. No one will seize them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one can seize them from the Father's hand. The Father and I are one. Immediately, they pick up the stones, wanting to kill him, right? Now, what's interesting is that he is in that particular verses, 22 to 30, on the days of Hanukkah, the dedication of the altar, he is actually standing up for the holiness and the authority of God. Because what people need to realize in the first century, that there was great corruption amongst the high priesthood. The corruption of the high priests, not all the priests. The high priesthood, Ananias was a high priest. Caiaphas, his son-in-law, became a high priest. So Ananias had 5 sons and a grandson. So now all of those guys they purchased. They were sons of Aaron, but they illegally purchased it. So he is redirecting the attention back to God. He did it at the exact place when all of the mentality of the people there are celebrating the victory over the oppressors, Antiochus, and they are now being oppressed not only by death, but also by the Romans. And instead of the leadership standing up and saying, we will stand with God, the leadership are buying into the Hellenization process. They were being Hellenized and Romanized. I mean, they were becoming Roman citizens, and they are acquiring Hellenistic type of behaviors. And God is saying, we're not repeating this over again. He sent his son to bring order back to his house, because the house represents the authority. But now, this is the reason why there's so much corruption going on, that Yeshua is dealing with the corruption. And he is basically, if you really pay attention to the narrative, and if you really pay attention to the historical account of the Maccabees, this will make perfect sense why he would go up and why he will speak those words. Because the one who gives eternal life is not the emperor. Remember, they were being conquered here by the Romans here. They were under Roman authority. The king at the moment was Herod. Herod and his sons were not even Jewish. They were Edomites. Because in the time of David and the time of Solomon, God says, when they break the commandments, the covenant, break the covenant, unrighteousness will come. So let me give you what happens through this in the story of Hanukkah, using the negative aspect of this methodology. Israel breaks the covenant. They are seeking men to keep them safe instead of trusting God to do what he promised. Now they become influenced by the culture, by immorality and idolatry, which is a transgression of the covenant. Hellenized Israel. You have to worship. I mean, there was one of the priests, every time I read it, I just get upset. There was one of the priests who sent people to Syria, and I think it was Damascus, somewhere around there, to do sacrifices to their gods. A priest of Israel, a high priest of Israel, endorsing Avodah Zarah, which is a strange cult. No wonder these events occurred. No wonder the chaos Israel has suffered. Because we are guilty of breaking covenant. No weapons formed against us shall prosper if we stay firm and believe in what God says and we don't compromise on his commandments. Because the king that I serve, he is good, he is kind, he is faithful and true. And he has promised us that if we are loyal with him, he will be loyal to us. And I count on that. So therefore now, when you break the covenant, that brings shame. And we're going to be talking about the shame in a minute. And that brings unrighteousness. They rejected God's righteousness. You know what Psalm 89:14 says? Righteousness and justice is the foundation of God's throne. The temple is God's throne on the earth. And righteousness supposed to come from the temple. But by them worshiping another God, they are rejecting the gift God has given humanity, specifically Israel, to be the image bearers of God. We are supposed to be the image bearers of God. We are the ones that when we walk, they should see the God of Israel through us. When we speak, they should hear the God of Israel through us. When we behave, they should see us behave as a covenantal people. If we behave in a covenantal manner, then the righteousness of God will be our rear guard. And then we will receive honor. And then we will walk in new creation. And then we will be orderly. There will not be any chaos. Because the God of Israel, when we serve him, obey the commandments. Leviticus chapter 26 and 27. Deuteronomy chapter 27 and 28 talks about the blessings and the curses. God doesn't curse you. When you accepted Yeshua as your Messiah and believe God raised him from the dead, you are affirming your covenantal oath to be loyal to God above anything else. So there's no weapons formed against me that shall prosper. If I stay within the fences, I'll be okay. If I go reinventing the wheel, go outside the fence and looking for somebody else to keep me safe, then I'm in trouble because it is my God's duty to do it because he promised. It's a covenantal duty. Yes? Touch my wife and you see what I mean. I train all the time just to defend my family. It's not even to defend me. She knows. I'm always concerned about, training and about security. You know that. We talked about this a lot. If it's in the physical, and I don't want anyone messing with my family. I love God. I love the Lord with all my heart. More than you know. But touch my family, I'll pray for you after. Because our duty is to have a zeal for God and defend the life he's given us. Okay, so now watch this. Let me give you some information. I'm going to be a little bit more information here, okay? Let's talk about the altar. Let's read in the book of Exodus chapter 29. Exodus 29, verse 20, 36, and 37. So where does the 7 days come from? I'm going to do a little different. See, we said, no, we do 8 days, but why? You got to ask the question, why do we do it for 8 days? Remember, it's about the altar, right? The altar was profaned by Antiochus. He put in a pig on the altar. They put an image of Zeus in the temple, and they defiled it. Okay? Therefore, they put another image, and they defiled it with the pig. Now watch what it says in the book of Exodus. And you will offer, verse 36, and you will offer a bull for a sin offering every day of the atonement. Okay? And you will offer a sin offering on the altar when you make atonement for it. And you will anoint it and to consecrate it. Ooh, wait a minute. You need to go look that word consecration. Anytime it uses the word consecration, it's no longer used for the profane, for the common. You cannot use it for anything else. In other words, if I tell you this is my Bible, it's my Bible, no one could use it. It's called consecrated for my use. But if I put it on the table and say, okay, guys, if you need to see a verse, this is my Bible. Now I went from the realm of holiness, consecration, to profane, common. Doesn't mean the Bible is profane, meaning that it's able to be used by everyone. You follow? That means that if someone, Passover, it occurs to you to go grab a lamb and then build an altar and then do the offering yourself and then get the blood and put it on the doorpost, you are now in direct transgression, and it's called ma'al. You're sinning against God, because God told us that only the priest can manipulate the blood, and only in Jerusalem, Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1 through 5. No other place. So when we understand consecration, then you know no one can touch it. Sabbath, no one can touch it. It's God's holy day. The feasts are holy. The temple is holy. When people talk against the temple, which happens all the time, man, I'm attacked more than you know. My teacher told me, and I didn't really believe him. You have no idea the attacks just because I talk about the temple. Now, remember, God consecrated the temple. I'm defending his holiness. When I talk about the priesthood, they attack me for it, but it's holy. When I talk about the land of Israel, to respect the land, they attack me for it. But remember, God sanctified it. It's a gift to Israel. When we talk about the kingship of David, which was a gift of God, a covenantal relationship, and it's holy for the land of David to be kings, they fight you with it. The same thing with, all the offerings and sacrifices. This is what it says. It says, and you will make atonement for it, and you will anoint it to consecrate it 7 days. Verse 37. 7 days you will make atonement for the altar, and you will consecrate it, and the altar will be a most holy thing. Holiness of holiness. And it says, anyone, and it keeps telling you, anyone who touches the altar will be holy. Now, you'll be for destruction or you'll be for. But who are the only people who can touch the altar in the Bible? The priest. In Numbers chapter 18, verse 1 through verse 5. A Levite cannot touch anything related to the altar. An Israelite cannot touch anything related to the altar. So therefore, when Antiochus came in and he defiled the altar by putting something that is not sanctioned, that is not ordered because it's holy, and you put a pig, you're not only profaning it, it becomes an abomination. And that's why the people of Israel went to war against the Greeks, in that sense. So when people speak against the altar, it makes no sense. They're not understanding the importance. And by the way, when the red heifer came about, remember we talked about the red heifer? Man, all kinds of people on the internet having arguments and stuff. And I never realized that some Messianics and Hebrew roots people, they were the worst. I'm going, oh my gosh, I thought they should know better. And it was a fight, not with Christians. They were actually excited. They were asking questions. What is up with the red heifer thing? He was actually amongst our ranks that took issue with it. And I could not understand it. So, watch. Let's keep reading. In verse 39, for the first lamb you will offer in the morning, the second lamb you will offer in the twilight. Now remember, the great tribulation will begin when the altar is defiled. If you follow eschatology, biblical eschatology, you know you're going to have the son of perdition, the false Messiah. He is going to defile the altar. How do you defile it? By learning from what happened already with the Greeks. By putting another image or sacrificing something on the altar that is not supposed to be on the altar, or having someone touch the altar who is not supposed to touch the altar. They profane it. You need to know this because the story of Hanukkah is actually the preview of what the false Messiah will do. And by the way, you don't need the whole building for the altar to be defiled, because it takes 7 days, and on the 8th day, the altar is valid. So I really believe that they're going to dedicate the altar eventually, and they're going to start building the building eventually, going to try, and then some guy is going to show up and defile the altar. You better know what you're looking for. I'm just sitting in the corner with my popcorn, waiting for that to happen. Because the moment that happens, and I know there's 1,000 some odd days for Messiah to return, then I don't have to guess. I don't have to have this prophetic thing. Oh, please, Lord, show me, show me. No, he did. Follow the instructions. The guy who defiles the altar, then you count 3.5 years. Done. The Messiah will come. You know exactly when he's going to show up. You're no longer going to be in darkness. You're no longer going to be doubted. You just wait and sit. The moment that that guy shows up and he sits in the temple as if he is God. By the way, it doesn't say he's sitting in the Holy of Holies. No one was allowed to sit in the Holy of Holies. No king of Israel can go in. Uzziah, the king, also Herod in the book of Maccabees, Antiquities of the Jews, I think is book 5, chapter, I can't remember right now. It tells us that Herod was not allowed to enter in certain areas of the temple. He was not a son of David. He was a king, not a son of David. But if you're a son of David, then you cannot sit down inside the temple. You have to sit somewhere in the court of Israel. And we already have a precedent on that. Someday I'll teach you on that. Let's go to verse 43, and I got to move on. And I will meet with the Israelites there, and I will be consecrated by my glory, and I will consecrate the tent of assembly and the altar and Aaron and his sons, and I will consecrate to serve as priests for me. And I will dwell in their midst of the Israelites, and I will be their God, and they will know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt in order to dwell in their midst. I am the Lord their God. So therefore now they're going to sanctify the altar and the tabernacle. Are you with me? Now, I'm sorry? Ezekiel chapter 43. Verse 43, chapter 43. I'll tell you right now. Verse 23 forward says, and when you finish about the altar, let me just read verse 22. And on the second day you must offer a he-goat without defect as a sin offering, and they must purify the altar, like they purified with a bull. When you are finished from purifying, you must offer a bull, a calf without defect, and a ram from the flock without defect, and you must bring them near before the Lord. And the priest must throw salt on them, and they must offer them as a burnt offering to the Lord. For 7 days, you must provide a goat for a purification offering for the day, and a bull, a calf, and a ram from the flock without defect. You must provide them. 7 days, 26. They must purify the altar, and they must cleanse it, and so they will consecrate it, and they will finish the days, and then on the 8th day, and beyond that, the priest will offer on the altar your burnt offerings and your fellowship offerings. Then I will please with you, declares the Lord your God. Guys, that's exactly why we have 8 branches on that thing. 7 days, on the 8th day, it's an altar. It's no longer the legend anymore. You see where I was trying to take you? So when somebody tells you, no, it's the legend of the Jews, no. Ezekiel 43, verse 23 to verse 27. Exodus chapter 30, I think it is, 29, verse 25 to 27. It tells us the protocol of the altar. Now, why do we have 9 then? Because the 9th one is the one that they get the fire to light the others. Shamash, right? In the temple there were 7. The middle one was to do the same. Are you with me? How many of you never really saw this before? Isn't that cool though? Hanukkah is coming next week, starting in about 2 weeks, I think. Many people have no idea what Hanukkah really represents. They're going to be doing the dreidel. That was a way to escape from the oppression. That's another story altogether. But what was the real reason as to why those priests fought to defend the integrity of the temple? Why did they do that? Okay, so let's continue reading. Let me give you some historical accounts. Is that okay? I'm going to read a little bit. Then we're going to go to the book of Maccabees. I don't know how much time I got, but I'll do my best here. How much time are you giving me? Are you sure? Time frame? To 12? Midnight maybe? Okay. Okay, so now we have Judas and the Jews waited through the 22nd of the month, which was the 9th Kislev, on their intercalated calendar, that is through the 8th day of the Sun festival. Okay, so what they're doing, they're getting back together. Let me go to the book of Maccabees. Let's get right into this. Now, immediately when we go into the book of Maccabees, we're going to find out who these people are. We need to know who are the Maccabees. And I want someone to go to 2 Chronicles, I think, 24. 2 Chronicles 24, Samuel. I'll find it here in a minute. How many of you never really looked into who the Maccabees were? What lineage of priesthood were they? Why were they living in Modim? In Modim. This is important. Yes? I'm looking for the verse. Can't find it now. When I need stuff, I can't find it. Give me 1 second. Man, I have this particular Maccabees book, but let's go right to this. Okay, somebody, when we read about the Maccabees, and I apologize because I have so many books open here that I'm trying to find it and I can't seem to get it. But when we go to chapter 1 in the book of Maccabees, it tells you that they were from Yoariv, which is one of the 24 priestly courses in the temple. Let's go to the book of Samuel or Chronicles. I'll get there in a second. Give me a minute. 1 Chronicles 24. 1 Chronicles 24. Yeah, 1 Chronicles 24. And it says this, verse 6. And the scribe Shemaiah, the son of Nathanael, one of the Levites, wrote them down before the king, the leaders of Zadok the priest, Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, and the heads of the fathers' houses of the priests and Levites, one father's house taken from Eleazar and one from Ithamar. Now watch. One from Eleazar, one from Ithamar. Keep that in mind as we're doing this. You know which house, which one belongs to. Okay? Now it says, now the first lot fell on Jehoiakiv, that's Eleazar. The second to Jediah, that's Ithamar. The third to Harim, Eleazar. The fourth Seorim, that's Ithamar. The fifth Milkiah. The sixth Miyamim, that's Ithamar. The seventh Hakos. The eighth Abiah. Now Abiah is the descendant of Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. Okay? Now it says, and the ninth to Yeshua, and the 10th to Shechaniah. Okay? So when you look into this, you know that their descendants came from one of the 24 priestly courses. Okay? Very important one. So now you know these guys are legitimate priests of Aaron. They're legitimate priests. Okay? And they live in Modim. Modim is about maybe about 20 miles, I think, about 50 miles from Jerusalem. It was actually a priestly community. Okay, priests lived there. Okay, they used to go from the Caesarea by the sea, and they want to go to Jerusalem. They go to Modim. You know, Jaffa did not really existed in that fashion. It was there, but they rather stop at Modim to go to Jerusalem. Okay, and they can go to Jaffa too. But, you know, they go to Modim to try to stop there, especially during the high holidays. Because being that it was a priestly town, they will do the rituals if you needed to be purified, you know, with certain things, okay? All right, so now, when you go and you look into the problem of the Maccabees, in chapter 1, verse 11 and 15, at that time lawless men arose in Israel, and seduce many with their plea, come, watch this, come, let us make a covenant with the Gentiles around us. Because ever since we have kept ourselves separate from them, we have suffered many evils. The plea got so favorable a reception that some of the people took it for themselves and to apply to the king, who granted them liberty to follow the practices of the Gentiles. Huge transgression of covenant. The king is not supposed to bow to the practices of the Gentiles. Now, I remind you the same thing happens today. This is a parallel to what happened then, is still happening today. So I know what's going to happen in the future, because it's the same symptoms, the same sickness, the same result. You follow? All right. How many of you have never read the book of Maccabees before? I highly recommend you do it. It's really interesting reading. You'll see how they got oppressed. The women were not allowed to circumcise their children, and if they did, they would get them naked, walking in the middle of the plaza, and they used to hang their babies on their necks, dead, and then kill them because they were keeping the Torah and because they were circumcising the children, which means a covenantal relationship. The Greeks were forbidden them from entering a covenantal relationship with the God of Israel. Just like many people nowadays, if you mention circumcision, all hell breaks loose. Isn't that a commandment? Something to think about. And it says, verse 14, thereupon they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem according to the custom of the Gentiles. You see, a gym today is nothing like a gym back then. See, when I went to Cortes, one of the 7 churches of Revelation, and I was there in February, early March, it's interesting because one of the nicest synagogue in Asia Minor is actually found in Cortes, right? And next to the synagogue, there's a huge gymnasium. They have the bath. They have the hot bath, the cold bath, and all men were naked. Okay? So therefore, if you want to go to the bathhouses or the gymnasium to do exercise, you have to be circumcised. So Greeks, you see, the Greeks and the Romans believed that circumcision was actually immoral. They believe because exposing of the gland, they believe that if you expose the gland, then you are immoral. That's why when you see the statues of all the Greeks, now you get it. It doesn't line up with the size. And they're not circumcised because to them, the size and uncircumcised represent immorality to them. That's weird. Right? Now imagine if you're a Greek woman, a Roman woman, dealing with this mentality in which a Roman man can have another woman as long as she's not a Roman citizen. She can sleep around even with the slave girls, even the slave men too. Now imagine if you're a woman. That's why the women, they all gravitated towards the gospel because they saw the contrast. They're saying, no, the Jewish guys, they're barbarians. They get circumcised. They are immoral. And then the Greek woman's looking at him going like, well, he's not cheating on his wife. He's a family guy. My husband doesn't have circumcision, but he sleeps around with all those guys and the women. It's like there's something wrong. You see, so God chooses the sign of covenant, and then in that culture in the Greco-Roman world, it was a sign of barbarism to the Romans, but then to Israel, it's a covenantal relationship. Interesting, right? So when it says here that they are now building a gymnasium according to the custom of the Gentiles, more than likely there's some homosexuality going on too. Within the city of Jerusalem, which is supposed to be holy. And some of them, epispasm was actually the surgical procedure practice to revert the circumcision. Some Jews did not want to be Jews, so they reversed their circumcision in order to partake of the business, because you go to a gymnasium, you do business, you see? Is this making sense? So the same thing is happening in the first century. I mean, there was almost civil war because the emperor wanted to have his image, one of them, wanted to have his image in the temple. Said, no, that's imperial cult. We will never go for that because of the Antiochus, remember? There was a huge hoopla going on. There was almost civil war going on. And one of the priests actually sent word and said, okay, tell the emperor that we are not going to be able to put an image of himself here, but we will accept an offering on his behalf to our God. And the Torah does not forbid a Gentile to bring an offering and leave it there as a way of a tribute. So the emperor said, okay, I'm good. That's good. How many of you did not know that? So the same problem occurred in the first century with the Romans wanting to impose imperial worship upon the people. So therefore, thereupon they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem according to the custom of the Gentiles and underwent operations to disguise their circumcision. I just told you about the procedure. It is right there. They underwent operations to disguise their circumcision. In Israel. Not in Rome. In Israel. Rebelling against the sacred covenant. They joined themselves to the Gentiles and became willing slaves to evildoers. Let me go back to this. Check it out. If you look outside the spheres, you're going to see two little balls there, two little spheres, one green, one red. The green one is moral purity and ritual purity. The red one is moral and ritual impurity. You see, if you go through the Bible, you're going to notice something really interesting. In order to get into the realm of life inside the spheres, inside the seven spheres, you have life, order, Eden, and holiness, and ultimately the temple and God, right? How do we get in there? Through a covenantal relationship. Once we swear an oath to God in loyalty, he gives us his righteousness, a gift of salvation. Once we receive the gift of salvation, now he gives us honor. He gives us a new name. We become part of his kingdom by raising our level of honor, giving us a Sabbath, to make us holy in his Sabbath, the feast, his Sabbath, to eat the holiness of the things permissible. Then we are a new creation because we're no longer worshiping gods. We're now only loyal to the God of Israel. Then we are now an orderly kingdom because we obey the covenants, and now we become sacred space to get in there. Now the only thing God requires of you in exchange for your allegiance, he requires moral behavior, right? And righteousness and justice. If you take care of the homeless, the widows, the strangers, and you behave in a moral manner, then you are the kind of person that God wants in his kingdom. Righteous people and moral people. Abraham was righteous and perfect in his generation. Look up the word perfect. It's tamim. Means morally upright. Ruth, she was a moral woman and she was a righteous woman. And God recruited her. You follow what I'm saying? So therefore, when these people decided to break the covenant, to embrace the practices of the Gentiles, that is a sin against God, a direct transgression against the covenant. Thus, now they received oppression instead of righteousness. Now they received shame instead of honor. Now they're behaving in an old nature, just like they did in the wilderness when they worshiped the gods with Baal. Remember Baal, and they also worshiped, Balaam and Balaam. Remember, told them, send the princesses over there, and they ate food, and they sacrificed, and they had sexual sex. They had sex with the women, remember? The three things that the book of Acts 15 tells you not to do. The three things. Acts 15 tells you the same thing. Tell the Gentiles these are the minimum requirements to start out. Don't commit adultery, idolatry, unclean food, and fornication. Fornication was ritual sex. Is this making sense? So now, because of the transgression, the Greeks didn't just show up. God is not that type of God that just, I'm just going to let anybody have their way with my people. No. His people decided to have their way with other lovers. And God says, okay, you want those lovers? Let me stay away from protecting you now. I mean, it talks about Ephraim in the book of Ezekiel, in the book of Jeremiah too, that Ephraim is the worst type of prostitute. It says, you pay your lovers. They don't even pay you. That's how bad you after adultery, spiritual fornication. You pay your lovers. I mean, think about what I just said here in these notes. They deliberately underwent an operation to disguise their circumcision. That meant they could no longer go into the temple. You didn't think about that one, did you? That means they can no longer go into the temple because they rejected the covenant. They're no longer welcome to go into God's sacred space. That's a huge affront. It's called in Hebrew ma'al. Ma'al, sin against God. You don't want to do that. You don't want to sin against God. So now, watch this. Chapter 2. During that time, after the whole thing's going on, Mattathias, the son of John, son of Simeon, priest of the clan of Yoariv, left Jerusalem and settled on the Modi'im. Then he had 5 sons. And listen to what happened. In verse 6, he says, I'm in First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 1 to 26. I'm not going to read them all. It says in verse 6, seeing the impieties that were being perpetrated in Judah and in Jerusalem, then the priests, remember, the priests are the ones called to keep holiness and to preserve it, to teach it. You're not bored, are you? No. Okay. Listen to what he says. Mattathias says this. Woe is me. Why was I born? Remember, he's a priest. Imagine if you're a priest and you see all these people worshiping other gods, raising up other idols, reversing their circumcisions. He is witnessing the Greeks actually building a gymnasium, and he knew what's going on in there. And this has been endorsed by the Hellenized priests, the Sadducees, and the king. And he's a priest. The zeal of holiness. Woe was me. Why was I born? To see the ruin of my people. The ruin of the holy city. The people sat idle there as the city fell into the hands of the enemies, the sanctuary into the hands of the foreigners. Her people acted like a base coward. Reminds me of some of the Jewish guys who are in politics right now. There's 2 of them right now. It comes to mind, 2. And when I hear them, oh, we're Jewish. When you go to Israel, they laugh at you. They don't think you're Jewish. You see, in Israel, the Jew is someone who practices the religion. If you don't practice and you live in Israel, you're an Israeli citizen. So when an American says, I'm Jewish, and they don't practice Torah, the Orthodox, they're laughing. They go, you ain't Jew. You don't follow the Torah. So when I hear some of these guys in politics, in the Congress right now, in the Senate, 2 of them, one more. When I see them, it just boils inside because God has given the opportunity to be in one of the most amazing countries the last 70, 100 years, and they're in a position of authority and power. Imagine if only they would actually put forward the principles and the values of the Torah. Imagine that. You know what's interesting? God, throughout the history of his people, has always placed some of his faithful people within the government. No coincidence that President Trump's son-in-law is a Jewish guy. No surprise some of the people in the cabinet may be Jewish. Interesting, because Biden has a whole bunch of Jewish guys. One of them dressed like a girl. I mean, what a shameful thing. It's the same story all over again. It's the same story all over again. Now, Israel goes to, Israel's going to go in the time of Canaan to Egypt, and already the Lord has placed Joseph there to protect them. Israel is going to be in slavery in Egypt, and he already put Moses in there to protect them. Throughout the history, God has always, in the time of persecution, this is the encouragement, in the time of persecution, in the time of struggle, in the time of chaos, in the time of willful disobedience by Israel against God, God's still faithful to always raise up a faithful one in the midst or closest to the power so that at the proper time we'll feel protected. It happened in the time of the Inquisition, on the Crusades. It's happened throughout the history. And don't be surprised, and it's not a coincidence, that some of the grandkids of the president-elect right now are actually Jewish. Interesting, right? I'm not saying he's going to do everything perfect, but it doesn't surprise me. And it doesn't surprise me that more people, and the problem that we're having is that we are not making a difference in this world. I mean, how many people who believe in Yeshua and follow Torah are in government right now? How about the Senate? How about the Congress? How about locally? We complain about what they do because the only ones speaking are the only ones who have no fear of God. But here we are. How come are we not equipped to have people amongst our ranks who can infuse the values of the Torah within the community? Then how come we don't do it? Because Israel always takes the way of the nations. We always have done that. Her glorious furnishings have gone into captivity. Her babes have been killed in her squares. Her young men have by the sword of the enemy. What nation has not inherited kingdoms, has not seized her spoils, or her ornaments have been taken away? And from a free woman she has become a slave. That's what he's saying, the priest Mattathias, in regards to the condition of Israel, because of the transgression of the covenant. Now they are made scorn, and they're shameful people. Behold, our sanctuary, our beauty, our glory has been laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. Why should we go on living? Mattathias and his sons rent their garments and put on sackcloth, and were overcome by grief. The king's officials in charge of enforcing apostasy. The king's officials in charge of enforcing apostasy. The king's officials. They actually have people just to teach you about what is a woman and what is not a woman. To teach you about sex in the school system to kids. It's the same thing happening all over again. Remember, the one leading the education and the health care are Jewish people in this country. Remember that. Okay. Then many Israelites came up to meet them. And Mattathias and his sons were brought into the gathering. The king's officials addressed Mattathias and follows. You are a respected and distinguished leader of this town, supported by sons and kinsmen. Now, be the first. Check this out. Be the first to come forward and obey the covenant, the command of the king, as all Gentiles have done, as well as the people of Judah and those who have been allowed to remain in Jerusalem. In return, listen to the exchange. In return, you and your sons will be raised to the rank of the friends of the king. Wow. Now remember when Caiaphas told Pilate, if you do not do something with Yeshua, you're not the friend of Caesar? That's a very important word in the ancient world. Meant that if you're a friend of the king, you are now a vassal of the king. He is your master. Wait a second. According to the covenantal oath, God is our master, no one else. So he is enticing him to commit treason against God. When the people of Israel, when we are committing syncretism, mixing the holy and the profane, and when we're not standing out for God's values, we are by default committing treason against God's covenant. We're not being loyal to him. And this is important, and now more than ever. No matter what the world tells us, we must be loyal to God. Now it says, and you and your sons will be honored by grant of silver and gold and many gifts. Wasn't Yeshua tested by the enemy? If you worship me, I'll give you all this. Yeshua didn't take the bait. Mattathias replies in a loud voice, if all the Gentiles under the king's rule listen to his order to depart from the religion of their fathers and choose to obey his commands, nevertheless, I and my sons and my kinsmen shall follow the covenant of our fathers. Far be it from us to desert the Torah and the laws. That's what we're looking for today. That's what we need right now. We need a kingdom who's willing to say, no matter what you want to give me, money, fame, I don't care what all of you do, but we are not going to desert, and we're going to move away from the covenant of our fathers. More than ever, God needs a kingdom who's willing to believe in him. I mean, right now people are talking about UFOs and stuff like that. Did you realize what's going to happen if the world believes there are actually UFOs? The faith of the people? You better be on point to know your faith. Because there's still the God of Israel, and the name of God is holy and he is true. Okay? So we need to be faithful. Now watch this. When he have finished, we shall not listen to the words of the king, that we should transgress against our religion and the right or to the left. When he had finished uttering these words, a Jewish man came forward in the sight of all the offer of all to offer, in the sight of all to offer sacrifice upon the altar, modi'im. See, in the temple, you never offer the meat on the altar. You slaughter it north of the altar, and then you put the meat on the altar. Here, they're putting the meat on the altar, slaughtering on the altar. That's an abomination, because the ancient religions was connected with the underworld gods. That's why you're not supposed to do that. There's a lot more to the story. Apotropaic worship. Okay? It says, when he had finished uttering these words, the Jewish men came forward in the sight of all to offer sacrifice upon the altar and modi'im in accordance with the king's decree. When Mattathias saw this, he was filled with zeal and trembled with rage and let his anger rise. And it was fitting. He ran and slew upon the altar. He slew them, killed them. Now, I'm not asking you to do the same. This could only be done under a theocracy in Israel. Let me show you why. This is actually, he is fulfilling Deuteronomy 13. In Deuteronomy 13, it tells you this. If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and gives you a sign of wonder, and the sign of the dreamer of the wonder comes to pass, which he has spoke to you, saying, let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. For that prophet and the dreamer of dreams shall be put to death. Now, if you keep reading, it tells you, if your brother, the son of your mother, your son and your daughter, the wife of your bosom, your friend, who is your own soul, secretly entices you, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known, neither you and your fathers, of the gods of the people which are all around you, neither near to you or far off from you, from one end of the earth to the end of the other, you shall not consent to him or listen to him. You shall not nor shall your eye pity him, nor shall you spare him or conceal him, but you shall surely kill him. Deuteronomy 13. And this is a Jewish guy. If a Gentile would have done it, no big deal. That's what Gentiles do. But when a Jewish guy says, I'm going to do this because of this command, and he's a priest, he did exactly what the Torah said to do. Because that could have led to complete chaos to all of Israel because of community, individual honor, and collective honor. Okay? When he had finished this, let me go here. At the same time, he also killed the king's officials in charge of enforcing sacrifices, and he destroyed the altar. He acted zealously for the sake of the Torah, and Pinchas acted against Zimri and the son of Salom. Right? What I love about the story is what he says next. And I'm not going to take very long. I'm losing my voice again. It's more like a little intro. Hopefully you go tomorrow. I'm going to talk about the Torah portion. But I wanted you to know why we have 8 branches. Where does it come from? A little bit of the history. There's a lot more that I could tell you about. I'm going to do 2 more readings, and then I'm going to tell you why I keep it, why I observe it. I know it's not one of the 3 pilgrimage feasts. I know it. But I do it because it's a national holiday. Did you have a great turkey night? Was it good? Thanksgiving was good? Okay, so people have no issues with Thanksgiving, but they have issues with Hanukkah. Is it really Hanukkah the problem, or is it because the Jewish people do it? Mattathias cried out throughout the town. This guy, he saw this guy profaning the land by worshiping. It was not a Gentile who was worshiping on the altar. It was a Jewish guy who in front of everybody, what an affront. He didn't care what anybody says. I want to go do it. And the priest, by the way, if the priest, Mattathias, didn't do it, he will carry the guilt too. And that's the problem we have today. We all get quiet and we don't say nothing. We can see the whole world go into chaos, and we said, don't say nothing, it's okay. Just pray. Mattathias didn't just pray. He said, no, wait a minute. That's not how it works. That's not the commandment. Let us stand up and do what's right. And what did he do? He started crying out throughout the town with a loud voice. All who are zealous for the sake of the Torah, who upon the covenant, march after me. We need Mattathias right now. We need somebody who is saying, those of you who are zealous for the Torah and for the house of God, let us keep the Torah, follow me. Where are those leaders today? We are struggling because we do not want to step forward, because it's a lonely road, a slander, criticism. People like you when you teach them, and then when you correct them, they no longer hear you anymore. If you study too much, it's bad. If you don't study enough, it's bad too. It's like people want to be comfortable, and God needs us to speak out. He needs us to take Hanukkah and say, we will stand for the righteousness of the house of God. We are not going to allow for the nations to influence us anymore. So it just so happened that this year, Hanukkah and Christmas are just this. And you'll see the decision making of certain people. You know, will my family just follow Christmas, and I don't want to create any problems, and Wait a second. I don't mean to create any problems here. Whom do we serve? Your family or the God of Israel? So we have to stand and say, okay, look, you don't believe like me? Not a problem. I'll see you on the 26th. Don't give me no gifts. I don't celebrate Christmas. Save yourself $30. Take me to dinner next week. Oh, no, but my kids, I just love them so much. So what? If they don't respect your lifestyle, why should you respect theirs? It's about values. It's about standing for our values and being the kingdom that is proud to say, we're not going to mix the holy and the profane. If you do it, go ahead. That's your deal. If you celebrate Christmas, go ahead. I'm not going to judge you. Don't you dare judge me because I want to follow the God of Israel. If I don't want to go to your party, not a big deal. I'll see you tomorrow. If I don't want to accept your gifts, so what? I save you money and I'm still your friend. We have to stand. It's not a coincidence that this year we are in the most pivotal time frame in our life. We have a president that we have to pray that he makes it to the 20th of January. This is important. You know, this type of message, if you want to be famous, don't teach it. It doesn't go well. Specifically, right before the days, because you feel like we're putting you against the wall. No, we're not. You're making a loyal behavior to God, who has given you salvation, who has given you redemption, who has justified you, who has given you blessings. All you do is tell your family, guys, I love you. I respect you. I honor you what you do. Fine, you do your thing. But me and my house, this is what we do. Respect my lifestyle. I'll respect yours. Enjoy your Christmas. I'll see you the next day. I'm going to enjoy celebrating the house of God and the victory over the enemies. Trust me, when all hell breaks loose, who do you think they're going to be knocking on whose door? The ones who stand for God's righteousness are the ones who will stand for him in the last days. Here's the one that God is going to look at and says, you stood for my behalf in front of your family. I need you to stand now in front of the community. Because the whole vínculo, el vínculo con la familia, the strength of the family, that covenantal relationship is hard to break. And I'm not asking you to do something difficult. I'm asking you to consider telling your children, guys, I love you. We love you. You know I love you. But we're going to live by these values. We don't want to mix it. We don't want to make that same mistake. Does that make sense? It doesn't have to be a point of controversy. It's a matter of respect. I had to deal with that the whole time. And I told even my son, you know, his mom actually helps him for the Shabbat, right? She doesn't celebrate Shabbat the way we do. But she understands his lifestyle. She respects his lifestyle. But I told him, don't you compromise it. Because the day you do, it gives them reason not to support you. You follow? Guys, I'm not saying that you pretending to be perfect and that you have to do everything to judge your family members. That's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is we have an opportunity to be faithful to God. And to tell them, you know what, I understand, guys, I got you. I'll see you a little bit later. It's okay. Don't feel like I don't love you. I love you. I'll give you the hug. But you see, the problem is that we feel that they're not going to understand us. It's okay. Does this make sense? I'm not doing this teaching to put you against the wall. But we cannot pretend to say we're the kingdom of God, and when it really matters, we're not standing for him. You'd be surprised. I recently found out that one of my friends from high school, a dear friend of mine, I'm talking about, we grew up, I know him since he was 12 years old. And we're still friends. You know, I was talking to him when I got here, and he goes, hey, man, I didn't realize that you were really doing this stuff with the Bible. I didn't realize you were, because I never told him, you know, what I do. I never told him I travel. I mean, he knows I travel everywhere, but it's not like I'm bragging, oh, dude, you know, I teach the Bible, you know. And he goes, man, I didn't realize. I'm proud of you. And I found out he's listened to some of the teachings. Now imagine if he sees me in person, and I'm not walking according to what I'm saying you see what I mean? You see what I'm saying? So this is only one example, guys. You know, if you're starting out and you're trying to find your way, don't beat your head against the wall either. You know, let them know. Talk to your family. Look, people love you. I remember when I started trying to follow the things of God, my biggest concern was, what will people say about me? Mind you, they were not there when I was homeless. Not that they gave me money to pay my bills, but I was more concerned about what they would think about me. And I remember I went to the gym, and there was a person that I met, and when I saw her, you know, I'm thinking, man, you know, I wonder what she's going to say about me now, you know, because when you went on the world and you party, you see all kinds of people. And yo, man, where you been? I said, well, I've been taking my time, and I said, I gave my life to the Lord. I'm serving the Lord. I got tired of all this stuff, and she looked at me, and I thought she was going to like ridicule me and stuff. She goes, wow, I wish I could do what you're doing. I need to change my life. And I'm going, why am I so worried about that opinion and that opinion and that opinion? If I walk in it, they'll see a change, and they're willing to walk in it. You know, it may take a little time. It may take next year. It may take the year after. But if you make a stand and you start educating them as to why, not criticizing why they do it. Tell them, hey, you know why I do Hanukkah? Because Yeshua, the Messiah, kept it. Look, let me show you what he did. He was fighting for the people to stay faithful to God. And make it a teaching moment. Make it like, you know, I don't do that because it's just not what, you know, what we're supposed to do. But check out why we do this. Let me show you. It's about the authority of God, how he blesses you. Now watch, I'm going to finish it up here in chapter 5, verse 36 to 61. It says, therefore Judas and his brother, verse 4. I'm going to read the whole thing because I want you to know why we celebrate Hanukkah. 7 days for dedication of the altar. Now we know why we have 8 branches and the 9th one to light the other ones, right? Did you get that? Are you still mad at me or no? Okay. Talking about Christmas is not easy, but I'm not talking about Christmas today. I'm talking about standing up for God's righteousness. Guys, it comes with a cost. It's okay. Our family loves us anyway. They do. You know, and we want to appease them because we love them. But you know, I thought one day, I said, you know, if a friend of mine really says he loves me, he would respect my lifestyle. But I mean, I don't know you, brother, but if we sit down and talk, there may be things that we may disagree about biblical stuff. But if I respect your lifestyle, you respect mine. And then if you ask me, hey, why do you do this? And I show you biblically, then you incline to the information and you change. My job is not to change you. My job is to be an example of what the word says and try to explain it so that you're able to get it. You follow? After that, I got to move away and let God do their thing. But the problem is that we become so self-righteous. We want to do something different. We don't do it right. And then we beat them up because they're not in the same place we're at. That's what the struggle is. We don't want the fight because we're not presenting it correctly. So therefore, we beat them up over the head with it. And now, you know, they see us breaking the commandment later. We don't do certain things right. And now they themselves go, but wait a minute. You told me this is this. And now look what you're doing. Now we don't have any leverage. But if we say, why do you do this? Oh, let me show you. We do this because this. How come you don't do the other one? Well, it's not really what we do. It's just a biblical observance. By the way, Jesus observed it. I mean, that's what I do. The Messiah kept it. Are you a Christian? You see it, you follow the Messiah. Yes. Well, I'm doing what he did. Didn't Paul says to be an imitator of the Messiah? There you go. Make it a teaching moment. People want to learn. If there's something I know about many, many Christians, they truly want to learn something new. Sometimes we don't do, including myself, we don't do a good job sharing with them. And I'll finish these verses and I'll be done. And therefore, thereupon, Judas and his brothers said, now our enemies have been defeated. Now, remember when he says, all of you who are zeal for Torah, follow me? 3.5 years later. Okay, 3 years later. He says, now our enemies have been defeated. Let us go purify the sanctuary and restore it. The entire army assembled. They went up to Mount Zion. They saw the temple laid desolate, and the altar profane, and the gates burned, and the courts overgrown with plants in a thicket and like one of the mountains. The chamber laid in ruins. They rent their garments and made great lamentations and put ashes. They prostrated themselves upon the ground and sounded the signal trumpet and cried to the heaven. Then Judas assigned soldiers the duty of fighting the men in the Akra. This is what people don't realize. The Greeks, they didn't want people going to the temple. So this is the Temple Mount. And what they did, they built another building, about 70 cubits, Temple Mount. It's on a mountain. And they built another building, really big, right near the entrance of the building so people would not go to the temple. I mean, they made the life of the Jews miserable. So that's called the Akra, which is called the Ophel. It's south of the southern steps. I could take you there if you go with me to Israel. Okay? Hint, hint, go to Israel with me. Okay? So now, watch. While he purified the sanctuary, he appointed unblemished priests, lovers of the Torah, who purify the sanctuary and remove the stones of the loathsome structure and to an unclean place. They deliberate over it what they should do with the profane altars on the burnt offering. Remember the altars, stones on the altar. What do we do? They came up with a good idea and dismantling it, lest the fact that the Gentiles had defiled it, it should be held to their disgrace. Accordingly, they dismantled the altar and put its stones away on the Temple Mount in a suitable place until a prophet should come to give an oracle concerning them. That prophet was Yeshua. Even the stones shall cry out. Because those stones were actually kept in the northwest building, Beit HaMoked. And northwest building is the far one on the right of the screen, right here, on the right of that temple model, right here. That's where they kept them in the bottom of the first floor. Okay? Now watch this. It says, taking uncut stones to prescribe by the Torah, they build a new altar after the pattern of the old. You cannot change the structure. It's got to be almost the same. You see, they repair the sanctuary and sanctify the interior of the house and the courts. They also made new sacred vessels. And they bought the candelabrum and the altar of incense and the table of the nave and the temple. They burned incense on the altar. They kindled the lights of the candelabrum. This is now this one is the menorah, so that they would illuminate the building, the holy place. They set loaves above the temple. And no, they do all this stuff. And it says, well, they rose early in the morning on the 25th day of the 9th month, that is the month of Kislev, early in the morning, in the year 148. Remember, the year 148. Okay, they brought a sacrifice according to the Torah. Numbers 28 tells you have to have a morning and the afternoon offering. See, according to the Torah, upon the new altar of burnt offerings, and they shall build. At that very time of year, on the very day, watch this, at the very time of year, on the very day on which the Gentiles have profaned the altar. It was dedicated to the sound of singing and harps and lyres and cymbals. Remember that the day before, they're lighting the candles, putting the menorah inside, doing all that, right? On the 24th, correct? That's exactly the prophecy in Haggai, when he gave the prophecy that they will start building the temple on the 24th of the Kislev, and they were lighting the candles in the temple on the 24th of Kislev here. And then dedicated it by doing an offering on the 25th. Are you with me? Are you learning something new? I'm almost done. I promise you I'm almost done. It says, at the very time of the year, very day on which the Gentiles have profaned the altar was dedicated to the son of sings, harps and lyres and cymbals. The entire people prostrated themselves and bowed and gave thanks to heaven, who have brought them victory. They celebrate the dedication of the altar for 8 days. Remember Exodus? Remember Ezekiel? Yes? Joyfully bringing their burnt offerings and sacrificing peace offerings and thanks offerings. They decorated They decorated the front of the building with golden cornices and bosses, and restored the gates and the chambers. Verse 58. The people were rejoiced as the shame inflicted by the Gentiles was removed. Judas and his brothers and the entire assembly of Israel decreed. He's not talking about the regular people, because they cannot decree. It was the Sanhedrin council, the men of the assembly. Oh my God, I gotta finish. Okay? And it says that the days of the dedication of the altar should be observed in their time of the year annually for 8 days, beginning on the 25th of the month of Kislev, with joy and gladness. So what we see here, guys, that Hanukkah, yes, is not a regular feast, but is an ordained national holiday decreed by the Sanhedrin council, that according to halakha, it becomes a ruling as a national holiday. To observe, to remember what? The dedication of the temple, which is actually the reason why we're here, because we're God's people. Therefore, now we are now celebrating His authority, His ownership, and His kingship by celebrating this. If you share this with our Christian brothers, they're going to have a different perspective and a contrast between one and the other. No need to be beating them up on the head with something. Stand strong. Stand for God's commandments. Be faithful to Him above all else. And not only your friends are going to respect you for it, your family will respect you for it. And eventually, if the world sees us stand for the God's righteousness and kingship, then the world once again will give honor and glory to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But for all those who stand for the Torah, who's going to follow me? We need to follow the leaders and follow the Torah and be loyal to the Lord. May the Lord bless you and keep you guys. Thank you so much. I can't sing it tonight, but please stand up. At least I'll say it. I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hope that tonight you learned something new, different perspective. Now you learn why the 7. Now, I got to do a whole teaching on Wednesday. It's 2-hour teaching. So eventually I'm going to record it again. And I want to do all the steps. And once you understand the history, guys, it makes a difference. And I understand the message now. And I need people to stand together to honor God above anything else. It's easy when things go well. But when there's adversity and you still stand, that's when God will be glorified amongst us. יברכך אדוני וישמרך. יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך. יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Thank you, Father, for tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to see my brother, to see the congregation. I pray that whatever I said is pleasing to you. I want to honor you. I want to praise you. I want to teach your kingdom to, no matter what, to stand for your covenant and to defend your honor the way you, my King, deserve to be respected and honored and revered. Amen. Shalom.